Swapping it behind here now. There's options in the box. Gustavo brings it 2-0.
Last second, will it be now? Towards the back post, across goal! They have it! The substitute, Cho Yu-sung!
주장입니다.
이영재가 다시 한번 기적을 Hello, 안녕하세요. Welcome to the K-League United podcast. Matthew Binns here, and I'm joined this week by a man who is unable to navigate the Dejon riverbanks. It's Paul Neat. Hello, Paul.
That's me, yes. Good evening, how are we?
I'm good, thanks. Glad to see that you've found your way here tonight, at least.
Yes, that's right. I very almost ended up in Jeonju via the Gapchon stream in Daejeon on Friday as my friend Tim and I had gone to watch the game against Ulsan. We thought we'd have a little scenic ride by the stream, head our way round to the stadium. But we stopped for pies first because I found a new pie shop in Daejeon. Very good, by the way. And we thought we'd about to turn left and go right around the main part near the Expo Bridge. Instead, it was more of a sort of an estuary type situation or a little branch of a different part of the stream. And if I hadn't have just said, wait a minute, we've been on this little bike path now for a bit longer than I expected, we probably would have passed the Hanok Mall, the Hanok village in Jeonju. But we made it eventually, just about. And speaking of just about making it, Matthew, you you made a bit of a balls up with the timing on Sunday for commentary. What happened there? Tell the viewers.
I can't really because I can explain, but I I had it in my. I knew the kickoff was 4:30, but we've done so many 7 p.m. kickoffs lately that during the course of the day, my brain decided to reprogram itself to think that the 4:30 was when I needed to be there for. Which is true. I needed to be there for 4:30, but normally we have to be there 90 minutes or so before kickoff. And there was a realization just under a couple of hours before kickoff that I was not where I was supposed to be. So a bit rushed. A lot of work in the taxi on the way to the commentary, but made it with 30 minutes to spare. So there was hopefully. Nobody noticed.
Well, there we go.
There we go. But it's not just us two talking this week. We do have another guest with us all the way from Incheon, not sporting their new relegation fighting edition kit, rather than the ACL edition, actually, optimistically, perhaps. It's Luke Evans. Hi, Luke.
Hello. No, this is this year's normal home shirt. I don't know if we'll actually wear it again.
Right.
Or if we'll stick to the special kit. The ACL shirts have been somewhat retired. I don't know that we'll be seeing them again. Can't believe it's only been a year and here we are.
But at least you had some. You had some. You were in ACL.
Better to have loved and lost? Is it better to have loved and lost?
Exactly.
So they say.
Don't cry.
It's one of those. You get the taste. You get the taste for the finer things in life, and then they're cruelly snatched from you.
Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing because obviously all three of us, are really in the mire coming into this podcast. Because, basically, if you're joining the podcast this evening, we're moving on from our Final A podcast from last week, and we're going to look further down the table to the lower half, where one of the most exciting relegation scraps in years is heating up. That's the optimistic way I'm framing this. Just 8 points currently separating 12th from 7th, with 7th also being only 5 points away from the nearest relegation playoff position at present. All 6 teams could very much end up in the thick of it. And those 6 teams, if you've not been paying attention, are 7th place Gwangju, 8th place Jeju United, 9th place Jeonbuk Hyundai Motor. Sorry, I had to double check that. Yes, 9th place.
That can't be right.
It can't be right, I'm sure.
Get that again.
10th is Daegu, 11th Daejeon, and 12th, it's Incheon United. We're going to be running through each of these teams from 7th to 12th, bringing you up to speed on their story so far, the form they find themselves in, our view on the manager at the helm, and the player best equipped to make a difference in these crucial final stages. We'll then also give our predictions on how likely these teams are to go down in our incredibly flawed probability system. And we'll also have time for your thoughts, questions, and predictions as well. So please do get them in the comments if you're watching along with this live, or post them afterwards, and we can perhaps read them. So let's get things underway. First up, 7th place Gwangju FC, and in a desire to be at the top of some kind of table, I have taken this one, gentlemen. It was always going to be difficult to top the efforts from 2023 for Gwangju, and they now find themselves in the lower half, and it shouldn't really be surprising, to be honest, all things considered. Key players left, replacements weren't overly convincing. It was an inconsistent start. It saw them lose 6 on the bounce in April before then regathering themselves to maintain a mid-table position. They had a transfer ban in the summer, combined with losing their key asset, Omji Song, to Swansea. So the reinforcements that could come through were only via their youth team. As a result, they have one of the youngest teams in the division, leading manager Lee Jung-hyo to even sport a backwards baseball cap earlier in this year in one of the season's more, yes, that really happened moments. Yet Lee and his fellow kids were doing okay, though, until recently, where continental commitments have kicked in. But speaking of Lee Jung-hyo, well, how do you rate a manager like Lee Jung-hyo? He's taken his divisiveness, can't even speak, his divisiveness up a notch from last year's outspoken press conferences, maintaining the abrasiveness and adding in questionable team selections and eye-raising fashion choices. However, when you consider how little Gwangju have to work with, how many challenges they faced, they must seek to find every advantage they can. And he's done everything he can to turn the media towards him rather than the team. His team is still a challenge to most. Nobody likes to go to Gwangju. It's not taken for granted anymore going to Gwangju, whereas I think perhaps it had been in the past. Well, this isn't news apparently that's made it to Asia, as they've seemed to have done quite well in the Champions League, it should be said, proceeding to thrash J-League heavyweights Yokohama F. Marinos to the tune of 7-3. And then this evening, defeating Kawasaki Frontale 1-0 away from home. So it's difficult not to rate him highly. I've given him a 7 out of 10. I can't explain why fully, but in a league needing storylines, him continuing to get under everyone else's skin while playing some decent attacking football along the way with the squad limitations that he has, he deserves some respect, I think. Key player for the run-in, controversially, given the manager's unwillingness to select him earlier this year, is Asani. 3 goals against Yokohama and a goal against Kawasaki Frontale this evening just further underscores how much of an established talent Asani is. The fact he has been kept out of the team for no clear reason for the majority of the season is both baffling and also a key to why the manager loses points on his rating. He's only made the 9 appearances in the league, just 5 of them starts, scoring twice. It'd be surprising if he thought staying in Gwangju for 2025 was a good idea. However, he has a league, perhaps a world to remind of his abilities before that, and could fancy his chances against 5 struggling sides and an Asia that is still working out who Gwangju are. Up or down? Because this is how I've decided we're going to predict it this week, gentlemen. So perhaps we can just quickly go through this. Up or down? I just want you to this week to say if you think the team is staying in K-League 1, going down to K-League 2, and I will give each of us one opportunity to sit on the fence. But for me, Gwangju, they're staying up. They aren't going anywhere. But they may take a few more rounds to truly be safe while their attentions are focused elsewhere. Paul,
I think they're safe, definitely safe. They're going to be fine. There's just a bit of a worry for them, obviously. No one's safe yet, but they'll be fine, definitely.
Luke, Gwangju, are they staying up or are they going down?
I think they're staying up. I've actually written, I think they're more likely to get kind of dragged into the nervousness than Jeju because of their other commitments and because of the age of the squad. But yeah, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be safe. I don't know of many. Has anybody ever been like dragged into like the bottom 2 when they've been in 7th or 8th, kind of going into the split? I think it's unlikely that they'll, that people will catch them. I think they'll be okay.
All right. Well, if listeners or viewers who are watching this stream think differently, well, please feel free to get them in the comments and let us know where you think Gwangju will finish. But for us 3, we think they're all staying up this season. on to 8th then, where we currently have Jeju United. And, well, to cover Jeju United is a man who went to Jeju for the first time in his 15 years living in Korea. Luke, you done your scouting report?
Yeah, the water's beautiful, the food's great. I'll be going back. Probably not to watch football for a while. No, Jeju have been an interesting team this year. Looking at the league table, they've actually lost the most games along with Gwangju. They've lost 18 games this year, but they've also only drawn 2, which I think is where they've actually found some stability. They don't draw a lot of matches, so they're not dropping points as often. They're either winning or losing, which is better than consistently drawing games. That said, like, they've won 12 games, which is 3 more than Jeonbuk. They've won 4 more than Daegu and Daejeon, and they've won 5 more than Incheon. So they kind of know how to win and how to get across the line. And I think that will be the difference between them staying up and not staying up. They have the worst goal difference in the league, but in K-League, that doesn't really mean anything because we don't go on goal difference. But they are the lowest scorers. They've only scored 30 goals this season, which is 1 less than Incheon. Although recent form, they've won 2 games from the last 5, and they've beaten Gimcheon within those 5 games, which I think is a great result. They've got Daejeon at home this weekend, which is going to be a massive game. I'll let Paul talk more about that. But I think if they get a win this weekend, they'll be looking a lot safer going into the split. Over the course of the season, Yuri's probably been their most important player in attack. He's scored 6 goals and got 2 assists when considering they've not scored many goals. I think that's a decent return. It's a decent percentage of the number of goals. Although obviously you'd imagine he'd probably have wanted more. Their manager, Kim Hak-bom, statistically is having his best season as a league manager. He's won 41% of his games, which is more than he managed at Gwangju, more than he did at Songnam, and more than he did at Gangwon. So yeah, I think he's done okay with the players that he's got and with the team that he's got. He's been helped with the fact that so many other teams have massively underperformed this year, mentioning no names. But I think they've had a level of stability that perhaps other clubs haven't been able to find. They've been decent at home, and having finished 9th last year and sitting where they are this year, I think they're very unlikely to get dragged into serious trouble. They might end up in 10th in a relegation playoff, but I really don't see them going down. They'd have to have an absolute disaster in their last 5 or 6 games for them to be in serious trouble. But yeah, my prediction would be that they will be okay. They might not finish many points above 10th, but I think they'll be okay.
Okay, so Jeju staying up for Luke. Paul, are Jeju staying up for you?
Well, I was going to say that they might actually go down, but Luke makes a compelling argument there about just how they are able to dig themselves out and get that win when they need. But I just think, I don't know, I'm torn about. I don't think they'll go down, but I think they'll certainly be in the bottom. Well, not certainly, but most likely, I think, be in the bottom 3. I think Jeonbuk will get out of it, and Jeju will get dragged into it. But
I'm going to commit up, down, or maybe. Maybe. You're using your maybe now. All right.
Using my maybe now.
All right. Oasis tickets are on sale soon in Seoul, as you said. Also, for me, I think I'm going to say maybe. I don't really want to know. Yeah, but
he's going to be the one that saved me. That's what Kim Hak-bom's saying, isn't he?
Indeed. We need to move on, gentlemen, before this deteriorates. Okay, so 2 of us, maybe 1 of us staying up. It looks like we're a bit unsure on Jeju, but probably more likely up than down. Moving on then into, where are we in the table? 9th. Currently, I have to keep checking because in 9th place, we have 9 times former champions, Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors. Yeah, well. They're in the final B for the first time in their history after a disastrous start to the season under Dan Petrescu. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Injuries were pointed to as an excuse. Admittedly, key personnel were absent, but after 6 rounds of inexcusable showings, Petrescu took the option to resign. John Buck's board then fumbled the transition. Rounds and rounds of football went by with Park Wan-jae and the coaching staff heading the team, with them even asking in post-match press conferences for replacements to be appointed quickly. But the board carried on dithering. There was talk of another foreign manager, with rumours of last year's caretaker manager Kim Do-hyun initially disregarded, only for the club to then return to Kim after it just became, after John Buck's position in the table really deteriorated to the bottom. Kim, he's found it hard to recapture the magic he found in his 8-game caretaker spell, having to deal with a team low in confidence, poor in form, multiple injuries, no discipline. That's 7 red cards and counting this season, it should be said. And then off the field issues too. It culminated in a humiliating 5-1 defeat to FC Seoul before changes had to be rang in. Captaincies were stripped, players were dropped or shipped out, and 8 players were brought in the summer. And while the team has found some semblance of revival in recent weeks, it's worth pointing out that they are still some way off the team that we used to expect. Money has greatly helped them here. Stating the obvious, but there's no way of ignoring it. John Buck have spent to save themselves, on top of all the spending they have done in the winter as well. And yet, there's still a lingering question mark over their safety. They seem to have awoken recently, now 6 games unbeaten, and finally out of the bottom 3 for the first time in a long while. Fans do seem to be galvanizing behind the team rather in front of the bus, which is also what they need. But there is a feeling, for me as a fan at least, of embarrassment. I'm embarrassed to cheer for their victories at present. I'm glad they're getting them once more. I'm glad that they're moving away from the bottom, but it's almost unfair to every other team in this race that they've simply address the problems by throwing money at it. Manager rating, Kim Do-hyun is a promising young manager, though, but it's difficult to truly judge his ability when so much has been based on transfers. However, while I agree to some extent, the off-the-field issues and the punishments were harsh, he's dealt with them swiftly and firmly to try and get a reaction on the pitch. I don't think we'll see his ability until next season. But for now, he has the tools available for the immediate job in front of him. And, he can have no excuses if he can't deliver safety with this team. So I'm giving him a 6 out of 10, but it's a cautious 6. I think 5 is probably fair, but he's done more good than bad. So scrapes a 6. Player to watch, Kim Jin-kyu. For every high-profile name that arrived this summer, Andrigo, Isongo, or even last winter in Hernandez, in Thiago, none have had the impact that Kim Jin-kyu has had after his mid-season return from the military. He returned to Jeonju like Troy Barnes, holding several pizzas, only to find the apartment on fire. He should be fighting for the title with Gimcheon, but instead he'll be tasked with rescuing a side that should know far better. He has slipped back into a central midfield role seamlessly and looks the most established of every 11 currently. If John Buck are to avoid the embarrassment of a relegation playoff, it will be him that has something to do with it. So I'm going to say John Buck is staying up. I think the form in recent weeks, I think the players they've got at their disposal, because I've used my maybe, I'm going to have to commit to something. And I think John Buck now have enough to get through. But do either of you disagree with me?
No, I agree. They're going to stay up. They may even finish in 7th place, I think, and do so not comfortably, but I think they may even be safe before the final week of the season.
Luke?
I think the fact that they have as much money as they do and they've spent it in fairness as well as they have with the players that they've brought in. I mean, even last winter we talked about it. They weren't just signing players to make themselves better. They were signing players that would kind of weaken other teams around them. And like Daejeon are worse off having made sales that they've made. Incheon are worse off for having lost Hernandez and Chon Sung-un. It's one of those where if you have the money to buy, you'll do well in this league, because not a lot of teams have the financial backing of the Hyundai teams. I don't see them like really sort of being in any danger. I think once we get to the split, they'll win a couple of games and it'll be curtains for everybody else.
Yeah, I think it's been enjoyable for the neutral to see the be more danger than there was last season, because last season it started very slowly, but eventually finish in the ACL 2 places. So it was like, well, that was fun while it lasted. It's lasting a bit longer this year. It's a bit more Hollywood in the way that it's going to end, but they are going to be fine, definitely.
Yeah, it's just
so maybe next year is what we're saying.
Yeah, maybe next year. Maybe next year.
Yeah.
But this is a 2024 podcast. We'll save that for the end of year reviews next year. But further down the table we go, and into 10th place. Paul, I think it's about time that you gave us some opinions. So in 10th place, I've forgotten who is in 10th. It's Daegu.
It's Daegu. Story so far, it's been a bit of a struggle. They started the season with Chaewon Kwon as the manager, but he fell on his sword and resigned. It seems like there's been a bit of a complete lack of consistency, basically, with this Daegu team. They finally got a first win in round 4. They didn't then win again until round 12, and both those wins were against Gwangju. A win followed, but then already 3 straight losses. 2 more wins followed, and then no wins in 8. So very stop-start. Most recent form, meanwhile, since that run of 8 without a win, it's been much better. 3 wins from 6 with just 1 loss. Zazenia finding form at the right time. More on him in a moment, but I think, Daegu have drawn their last 2 matches. Both were draws that sort of come back from behind to sort of earn a point. And they actually ranked 4th in the league for points won from losing positions behind Pohang, Suwon, and Gangwon. So they've got a bit of character about them. Manager rating, I would say 6 out of 10, and that's probably a little bit generous because he does seem like a nice bloke, does Park Chang-hyun. He's had 24 matches in charge, so almost a full regular season, really. Winning only 7, drawing 7, and losing 10 to earn 28 points. They show great spirit to fight back from 2-0 down away at Jeonbuk, and I think that was his first game in charge to earn a draw. But like I said, just a little bit of lack of consistency. Now that they are under pressure, they are starting to get results. So maybe that rating would improve, a bit further down the line. Most important play for the games ahead. It's extremely obvious, but Zazenia. Who else would it be? Just look at the last 2 goals that he scored. He saved Daegu in both of those games, earning 2 points. And, 2 points more at this stage with how tight it is in the bottom 4, 5. That's quite a lot, actually. So I think what I will say is that if teams do their homework and they stop leaving him unmarked like he was for both those 2 goals, one against Seoul and one against Gangwon, then he might have some issues there. But he is a talisman. 10 goals and I think 7 assists. He's in MVP category there, even with a team that's 3rd bottom at the moment. And he's also scoring important goals at the right time. So I had a little look to see how many more points extra Daegu have after his sort of goals and what they mean. It's 5 more, so that's a lot. Plus, he scored goals in more comprehensive wins, but important goals. He got the 2nd and 3rd goals in a 3-0 win over Jeonbuk. 1st and 3rd goals in a 3-0 win over Gimcheon, and 1 in a 4-0 win over Jeju to then make it 2-0. So he's scoring goals at important times. Even if the game has become more comfortable for Daegu, he scored goals at important times, and that's what he's doing right now as well. As for relegation and how likely that would be, I would say, well, I've opted to do this a bit differently. I want to say likelihood of staying up. So I say 55% likely to stay up because they have match winners like Zazenia. Also, Jong Chin has come back from Gimcheon and looks like a really good player. So I just think as long as they have Zazenia fit and in form, they have a good chance. So I'm going to say that they will stay up, but most likely to, yeah.
Luke, how do you see it going for Daegu?
Well, process of elimination for me, I've just said that the previous 3 teams won't go down. I don't think Daegu will go down, but I do think they'll end up in the playoff. I don't see them losing the playoff. I think generally the K1 teams do far better in playoffs. It's not very common for K2 teams to win the playoff because of how the playoffs are structured. Paul can attest to that being quite unfair. But I think they will finish. I think they'll finish 10th or 11th. depending on how well Daejeon do. But I don't see them going down.
Yeah, I think I'm going to almost copy you light for light there. I don't see them going down. I think they're too good to go down against K2 side in a playoff. That's where they probably are going to end up. I think they are scrapping and they are finding those results, but I don't know how sustainable that is. I think there are still quite a lot of flaws there with Daegu, so I still think they're probably going to just get dragged into the bottom three. But yeah, I still feel that they've got enough in them to probably get past the K-League 2 side over 2 legs. But we'll move on to a team that, well, it wasn't so long ago they were in the playoffs, Paul. They might be going back there again. Your beloved Daejeon Hana Citizen, you recently witnessed them. Unfortunately lose to Ulsan. No shame in that, really. But yeah, how are they doing overall?
Should have been a draw, really. There's a really foolish penalty to give away that was the deciding goal in the game in that one on Friday. But I mean, story so far has been a lot of upheaval, players leaving, players arriving, denial about the kind of football that they should be playing. 2 weeks before the season, the captain, and I know I've harped on about this before, he left, best centre-back leaves, and they suddenly go back to a 3, not a 4, as was the plan during pre-season. Then there's confusion and a distinct lack of preparation. They were always playing catch-up. It took a long time to get going. But even after the first win in round 5, form was poor. They lost the next 2 and then didn't win again until 4 games later. The next win after that was 7 games later. By this time, the manager has gone, Lee Min-song. Hwang Sun-ong took over for the away trip to Pohang in round 17, got a draw in his first game, won the following game, but then went 7 without a win. So that brings us to their most recent form. There's been 7 games since then, and they've lost just once, winning 4. So 11 players were brought in during the summer, including Masatoshi Ishida and Kim Min-hwan, and also Bobsin from Daegu. They've helped this sort of turnaround in form. Masa's very important. Bobsin, as I'll come to in a bit later, is also very, very important. And now, really, I suppose even more so if you go back to before the fixture's just gone, Daejeon were the form team. Now you can say it's more like Jeonbuk. And they were looking good. The testament now is how well they can respond to that. And they've got Jeju away at the weekend. Will one bad result affect the mentality and really disrupt this good bit of work that they've been doing recently? Manager rating, I'm going to give him 6.5 out of 10. They've had some success on the counter, but like I said, it took a while to get going under Hwang Sun-ong, and they look dangerous when they use their high press. But I suppose we'll have to see how they respond again against Jeju. That's a huge game. Most important player for the games ahead. Special mentions for Masa and Bobsin. Masa will produce magic and Bobsin will link everything together very, very nicely. But I would probably say actually the goalkeeper, Lee Chang-gun, if they didn't have him, they'd be bottom of the league. He's unbelievable how good he is. To me, he's the best keeper in the league. And I know I'm slightly biased in saying that, but I think he's a better all-round keeper than Choi Han-woo for me. So he's those 3 in particular, but more so the goalkeeper. In terms of their relegation chances or survival chances, I would say 65% likely to stay up, maybe higher, but it all depends on whether they can beat Jeju and drag them right into it. So I'm going to say stay up, but that's my percentage there.
All right. Well, Luke, I'll pass it over to you. Daejeon, are they going down? Are they staying up?
I don't think they're going down, but again, similar to Daegu, I think they're going to be in the bottom 3, either 10th or 11th. And again, I think given the signings that they've made, which similar to Jeonbuk, it's actually worked for them since they've made those signings. I think they'll have enough to beat a K2 team, regardless of who it is and whether it's the second place or it's the 3rd, 4th, 5th playoff winner. I think they'll stay up, but I do see them being in a playoff place. I think playing catch up from this part of the season going into the split, it's tricky. And when you know that you can get a draw, if you're a team in the upper part of the lower bracket, if you know that you can get a draw and that'll just keep you safe, you can stick 10 men behind the ball, try on the counter and not have to go all out. Whereas when you're playing catch up, you have to win games, and that's where it becomes dangerous for you because you're leaving yourself open potentially. I think they'll be fine, but it will be through a playoff.
I think it sounds like we've all got similar ideas. I think they'll be fine. I'm going to be slightly different because I've said Jeju will maybe go down. So I'm going to say that Daejeon are the team that get out. I think it's going to be Daegu and Jeju that will be in the playoffs, just because that's the kind of bed I've made for myself through the duration of this podcast without really thinking. But there is one...
Sorry, I agree. And I think but a lot of what we're saying will hinge on this weekend's results, because if Daejeon beat Jeju, they go above them in the table. If Incheon get a win, then they are, level on points with Daegu potentially. If Jeonbuk beat Daegu, all these fixtures are just so. A lot of things hinge on this weekend's fixtures.
And a lot of what we've said as well, like with Sestina being Daegu's most important player, he is susceptible to injury. And I think if he gets injured for even just 2 or 3 games, like Daegu are in so much more trouble than if he's able to stay fit. Especially with him being the age he is, he's coming towards the end of his run. And I think if he gets hurt, it's a very different prospect for Daegu than it is with him playing and scoring goals.
That's a very good point. There seems to be a bit of over-reliance perhaps on him. So that's the other 5 teams. There seems to be one team that it looks like we may all have similar ideas on where they'll be finishing roughly, unfortunately. But yes, so, weather's getting colder, Coca-Cola adverts on TV, Incheon in the relegation playoffs. Tis the season, Luke. When do you put your Christmas tree up?
Well, if it was up to my wife, it'd be up as soon as the Halloween stuff's down. I try to wait until the last week of November. In my defense, we do have to take it down before Christmas. So, this season's been abysmal, I think is perhaps the right word. I was making some notes and looking back on different games, and we've won 2 games. We've won 2 games on the bounce once this year, and that was at the end of March going into April. We beat Daejeon and then Gwangju. We've not since then won 2 games in a row. And unlike Daejeon in the summer and Jeonbuk in the summer, rather than signing players, we've actually let players go. We've ended up with a weaker squad and fewer players than we started the year with. And it was a weaker squad with fewer players than we ended last season with. We've dropped a lot of points late on. And when we're actually trying to get back into games, we don't seem to have any urgency. We don't attack very well. We take 6 passes to spread the ball across the field, or we take 6 passes to get the ball from the defense to the attack. And by which time any option we had of a counter-attack has gone. We've got wingers who come back into our half to pick up the ball and then turn around and run at the 4 or 5 defenders that they now have to beat. And so the likes of Kim Bo-sop and Jerso and Kim Sung-min, who do have good potential to make a difference for us, they're always faced with 3 players or 4 players that they have to beat to even get anywhere near the goal. You look at how Jeonbuk play, you look at how Daegu play, you look at how Suwon play, it's really fast. And it's pretty positive football. They're looking to move the ball forwards, whereas Incheon seemed to settle for having the ball and passing it sideways and backwards. And we don't have anybody in the middle who can create anything. We lost Aguilar and we've never replaced him. We're over-reliant on Magosa. He scored 14 goals this year. He's joint top goal scorer for a team that's bottom of the league. which is pretty impressive, I think. We've had Jerso out for a long time. Im Young-ju, Shin Jin-ho has been injured. Delbridge has been in and out of the team. We changed manager halfway through the season. I think Jo Seung-hwan did a great job while he was here, but this year was kind of, he ran out of ideas. When his game plan didn't work and when the players he was picking weren't able to get the results, he didn't know what to do. Out of respect for him, probably we waited too long to change things. Chae Young-gun came in, and although the manager's changed, the philosophy hasn't really, even if we've messed about with different positions, playing 3 at the back or 4 at the back, the style of football is still the same. It's really, really ineffective. Magosa hasn't actually had a lot of service, which I think has been a huge problem as well. He's been up front on his own. It's testament to his ability that he's managed to score 14 goals in the way that he has. Regarding who's the most important player for Incheon in the running, I don't think it's any one person. I think the team need to kind of find a bit of battle and find a bit of pride. And I'm sick of hearing in post-match press conferences, we're still fighting. It's like, I haven't seen them fight this year. It's it feels a bit disingenuous, the press conferences, because it's all the same rhetoric with nothing to actually back it up on the pitch. I think we're nailed on to go down. I don't think we'll get off the bottom of the table again this season. And if we do, it won't be for very long. I don't see where the next win's coming from. And I've accepted our fate, and that seems really, really pessimistic. But given that we've got 6 games to go and everybody else is finding form, and we're still kind of looking around, waiting and seeing where we can pass it to. And yeah.
So would you say that's the difference then? Because Incheon aren't strangers to this kind of position at this kind of the season. It has been a couple of years, mind, but what makes this season more pessimistic than the previous opportunities?
A couple of things. I think everybody mentions once the leaves change, Incheon actually start to finally play. But before that, you've seen somewhat of a build-up going through late August into September. It's like, right, okay, we start to get some points on the board. And we haven't so far. And it's not that we haven't even got points on the board. We just haven't looked likely to. As much as people within the team or the manager or whoever might say, well, it was a better performance. Performances aren't rewarded with points. You either win a game or you don't. And when it comes to the last 6 games, I don't really care how we play. I don't care if the performance was good. I don't care if we make 1,000 passes in a game. We need to get points on the board. And every other team around us is doing it. Daegu's doing it. Daegu's beating teams you wouldn't expect. Jeonbuk's winning games. Daejeon are winning games. Daejeon are avoiding defeats where Incheon are losing games to the same team. Incheon are throwing away leads. Incheon are going behind and waiting until the 85th minute to actually get any shots on target. I think the actual culture of football at Incheon, I don't know what's happened in the last 12 months. But every single player seems to either be out of form, out of confidence, or overwhelmed with what's being asked of them.
Sorry, Luke. I was just going to say, I think the Cho Sung-wan era, I think because he's such a strict person, and it's just, he kept you up in 2020 and did very well the year, more than safe the year after, and then we know what happened for the last 2 seasons. I think you can have that kind of autocratic style for a while, but only a short while. And players start getting bored, and they start getting sort of, is this it? There's no trust. I think when it's really serious and you're in a real desperate situation, you can justify having that really hardline approach to how you handle your players. But I just don't think in the modern era you can keep doing it for that long. And I think the players got a bit sick of him, and they didn't have anyone. Obviously, he left. I think he resigned, didn't he, rather than he got sacked. But But
Yeah,
it was
it
like
was
they had,
mutually agreed. Mm.
but they didn't have anybody lined up. And I'm sorry, but obviously we've already talked about this before. But the person that they appointed is this so underwhelming, so
Yeah.
underwhelming.
And I don't think he brings anything different because he was at the club when Cho Sung-hwan was there. He was there. He was at the club as, I don't know what the club's term was. He was there as a coach, first team trainer, whatever they called him at the time. He's come in with, I think, a similar mentality to what he learned from Jo Sung-hwan. He's come in and tried to continue doing what he was doing. And it's the same teaching. If you shout at kids every single lesson, eventually it'll have less and less and less and less of an effect. And you saw how, if you remember last year's game, at the end of the season, we were playing the kids. We played the youth team essentially against Ulsan and won 3-1. We played the kids against Gwangju and won 2-0. Cheo Jin scored. Cheo Jin's not featured this year. He's been called up for like the national team and been part of the training sessions for the national team. Doesn't barely get a game for Incheon. And when he does, he's clearly been given instructions that, okay, you're a winger or you're going to be playing as a forward, but you need to come back and get the ball on the halfway line and turn around and then run, which is not what wingers need to be doing. Wingers need to be on the last man or on. It's baffling watching it. And I'm sure people within the club will be able to justify how things are being done and in what way they're being done. But I mean, you talk to the people in the ground, none of them understand like what is this like football that we're actually attempting to play. We're not good enough to keep possession. We get caught on the ball and concede goals. We play it out from the back and nearly concede goals. We're too deep in our own box. We do 6 passes to get it to the halfway line. We can switch the ball and we don't. This has turned into a rant, but there are so many things that have gone wrong and that haven't been addressed because everybody's got this kind of like misplaced belief in, oh, well, once it gets to September, we'll start picking up wins. And we didn't. And it's okay, well, it's October now. Now we'll get going in the split. And it's like, well, it's probably too late. 3 teams are in relegation contention now. It's not 2. It's not where we can avoid on the last day by finishing 10th. We're in trouble. And even if we manage a playoff position, which I don't think we will, I don't actually see us beating a team who's playing with confidence and like attacking ability coming up from K2. I just don't see it because there's no belief. There's no kind of creativity. There's no spark. I feel really sorry for Mpoku because he's potentially that creative player, but because of the fact that we have the foreigners that we have who play ahead of him, Delbridge is injured, so Jonjic plays, Mugosa and Jerso are involved, and so like Mpoku's kind of the forgotten man. And when he does play, he gets dragged off after 30 minutes. But he has the potential to be that creative player, and he doesn't feature. And instead, we have 3 players who play in midfield who do essentially the same role and aren't really sure what that job is. I don't know. It's frustrating. It's not upsetting. It's not disappointing. It's just this was avoidable with better management and better awareness of play roles and better tactics. We don't have the weakest squad in the league. We don't have the weakest team in the league. But this year, whatever we've tried hasn't worked. And it's because it's been the same style of football every time. And if it doesn't work the first time, then there's no point in keep doing the same over.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, good to hear. And there's still 6 games. A lot of things can happen in 6 games. But yeah, is a lot of points you're making there that doesn't sound too optimistic. And I think one thing as well is just that there are 3 other teams above them directly. Daegu, Daejeon, Jeonbuk. They've all also changed their managers, but they've all picked up form at the same time. These last few weeks, it feels like each of them have been getting the same results. Like they all win at the same time. They all win. It's the worst. We're talking about how competitive this relegation race is. How many these teams are keeping level with each other and Incheon aren't. And there's a real risk that they could just fall behind.
Well, if you think back to the summer, I think it was probably like the end of July time. Incheon, we weren't doing very well. We'd not won many games, but we were kind of like 8th or 9th. Mm-hmm. It's been absolutely disastrous. Like we kind of started the season with the 2 wins back to back, and we were like mid-table. Okay, we need to pick up and push on. But then everybody else has surpassed us, and you've watched it happening in slow motion. And you just said, well, there are 6 games left. It's like, yeah, but a month ago we said, well, there are 10 games left.
Yeah.
2 months ago as well, there are 15 games left. It's like,
I think the phrase sleepwalking into a relegation battle is how you could describe Incheon.
And we won't be the first team to do it. And once you go down, it's very, very difficult to come back up. Budgets will be cut. We don't have money as it is anyway. How many players in that present squad are going to want to play in K2? And then, so you're going to be looking at new identity, new players, new style of football, perhaps a new coach, half the attendance of the year before, and much less money. It's going to be absolutely disastrous. And the fact that it was avoidable makes it unforgivable.
Matthew, what do you think about this then?
I mean, I've said everybody else is staying up. So, unfortunately, Luke, I've got to say, I think unfortunately Incheon's luck has run out, and I don't know whether Cho Sung-won, he was a good manager for a while for Incheon, but he was the same at Jeju. He's a good manager, but he's not a great manager. He doesn't know how to turn things around when it's going
maintain.
Wrong. Yeah, he couldn't do it at Jeju, and Jeju got relegated, and unfortunately, I think the damage may have been done here. So yeah, I'm saying Incheon down, I'm afraid. Paul?
Yeah, I agree. I think they are going to go down, but then the thing is, as we've already talked about, there's just that DNA, and you see if it. Well, would I be foolish to say that they're going to go down when they've just got a history of doing it almost every year? I'm just having a quick look now at the squad from the last relegation battle, and there's only really Oban Sok doesn't really play very much these days. Kim Yeon-soo, Jong Dong-yoon, Moon Ji-hwan, obviously he's injured, decent play. Kim Do-hyuk is there. Kim Jun-yup is there too.
He's like
Ji On-hak
now.
Yeah, Ji On-hak and Magosha and Song Shiu. Those are the players that are still here from at the club from the last relegation battle. So not many really that are that influential. Probably 3: Kim Do-hyuk, Moon Ji-hwan, and Magosha. And
I would say of the players that you've mentioned, like Song Shiu, I think he's been like washing up or washing kit or something all season. Ji On-hak, I don't think he's even been on the bench. If he has, I've not noticed. Like, there are so many players that we have within the squad who they're so like sort of they have nothing to offer at this pace. It's like the Incheon squad of the past 2 years that was doing well kind of surpassed their level, but they're just still on the books. And because they're still on the books and we haven't moved them on, we haven't brought anybody else in to replace them. And so they're just kind of doing nothing. They're bodies, but they don't play. We're badly managed, and not just the squad. I think the club, we've been lucky the last 2 years, perhaps, or we've like flattered to deceive. But the DNA, I don't think is enough, because I don't know how much of it is actually real. Well, sorry, this was really critical.
Grim times indeed. Well, we'll try and cheer everybody up by moving on to the mailbag here, and I should also say thanks to Scott Little for his festive question at the start of that rant. Ryan also coming in the comments saying, "Sorry, Luke, someone has to make room for John Nan to get back where they belong." Oof, harsh. Whereas, Andrew as well. Cheongnam Asan greater than Incheon. Lots of support from the fellow K-League United staffers there, by the looks of things, Luke. I'm sure you can have all their number when it comes to the Christmas party.
This is something I kind of expect as well. It's like people have been expecting Incheon to go down for so long. I get the feeling that like it's going to be, finally they went down. It's like, I don't know. It feels like everybody's been expecting it and wanting it for so long. It's kind of going to be kind of almost celebrated because finally people got it right.
I wouldn't say wanted it. I've always kind of liked the Incheon the Incheon scrap at the end, but I mean they've also been versing teams that I've also wanted to go down ahead of. So I mean we just have to pray that Jeju the wheels come off, and we can all be happy.
Or the wings fly everywhere, haven't they?
It's 11 o'clock, everybody. You can tell. Anyway, we do have some other questions in the mailbag, thankfully, to save us from that. Diogo, our very own Diogo, has written in, but he was asking about John Buck. We've kind of already touched on it. He was asking a simple question, but addressing it, the elephant in the room. Will John Buck get relegated to K-League 2? He thinks no, because they managed to get into form at the right time. I think we've already said we don't think John Buck are going down, so we don't need to touch on that, but thanks very much for the question. I also think, who else do we have here? We have Francesco Trasferini. Touches on Final A and Final B. Final A, he thinks Ulsan versus Gimcheon will be the battle for the title until the end, and Seoul and Gangwon for third. But for Final B, for this podcast, sorry, Luke, he's got Incheon to get relegated. I think Jeju will be in the playoffs. Last playoff spot, I think, will be one between Gwangju and Daejeon. Daegu and John Buck have been doing better lately. So also... Well, one more on the John Buck going to be safe. I don't like all these people saying John Buck are going to be safe. Perhaps the wheels are going to come off, but who knows? And we have at KLG Fellow. I love how 3 Final A teams from last season are now stuck in Final B fighting against relegation. You anarchist wanting all these top teams going down. John Buck looked rejuvenated, but Daegu, Cecina FC in brackets, and Incheon in particular look troubled. How do you explain this fall from both teams? Well, we kind of have really, but yeah. So
yeah, thin squads, I think you can say. Yeah. You can touch up for Daegu and for Incheon. Well, Incheon squad was thin already, and then got thinner in the summer, as Luke mentioned earlier. So I think that's what it's been.
We should mention though is like John Buck and Daegu both have B teams, so their squad, even though we can say it's thin, perhaps on the first team front, they have got depth if they wanted to use it, and it's the fact that they don't really use it unless it's ACL too fast, too furious for John Buck. We don't really see these players play, and instead they choose to bring in 8 more players because they've got the financial capabilities. But yeah, Daegu, I don't know. Daegu, I feel like they have got a thin squad still, I guess, to a degree. But yeah, if there's a B team, it's really hard to argue the thin squad. And there's 11 of the players.
But I just think that if the B team players were any good, they'd got more of a chance in the first team, because they're in K3 now. They're not in K4. They got promoted last year.
Yeah,
their B team. I think we would have seen more of them played in the first team. Obviously, John Buck did have a couple of young lads play in that ACL2 game, but it was against a team that's not very good. So, I mean, I think Cebu FC is probably about the same level as a K4 team. Probably,
yeah.
Well, less so. I don't know.
I did want to tweet that out because I want more teams and more nations represented in these competitions. And I think it's great for the competition. But yeah, I was thinking as those goals are going in here, this team is getting thrashed by what is effectively a K4 team.
This resort is getting hammered. Usually you get hammered at the resort, but John Buck hammered the resort.
Yeah. Well, before we have all the Cebu FC fans writing in, we do have one more question from Andrew. He's saying, what are your thoughts on the state of the pitches? A lot has been said about the pitches lately. A lot of people saying things about the pitches. We've had Son Heung-min have his thoughts when Korea were in town. Korea will be back in town as well to see if anything's improved. Jesse Lingard's got in on the act recently. Plenty of managers also saying their bit as well. The pitches.
Not good. The K-League's good name's been dragged through the mud recently because of the state of the pitches. But I actually spoke to somebody on Friday. I'm not going to say who works for a club, and I asked them why it is the way it is, and they told me it's because the clubs do not employ the ground staff. They are employed by the stadiums, and the stadiums are owned by the local government or a separate company that runs a stadium. So there's the pitches aren't really cultivated for football. There's no real science behind it. And if you look at a Chonan City's pitch, they have a specialist ground staff on the books at the club, and their pitch is like a snooker table. So it's something that the teams are going to have to address, because they've had Ulsan and Gwangju. They have to move their stadiums for the next ACL game. Guangzhou, the reports are they're playing in Yongin for their next ACL home game.
Wow.
Because there's no other stadiums nearby that they can use. Ulsan are going to have to use the Civic Stadium.
Yeah. I was hoping you were going to say the Steelyard then, but I saw Steelyard the other week, and that's not much better. Yeah, the pitches are a big problem at the moment. They're just in absolute disrepair, and if it's in Seoul, it's just loads of other things like concerts and other things that go on in there. And I mean, for newcomers to the podcast, as you just mentioned, newcomers to K-League don't own their stadiums, and obviously goes across to the pitches as well. And it's really difficult to lay the blame at K-League because you're like, well, if the local councils won't do anything, if the local governments won't do anything, they won't. But there's got to be pressure on it. There's got to be, pressure put on these, because you just said there, there's not the football. I can't remember your wording there, Paul. You said something. It's not football
cultivated
football. Yeah, but it's a World Cup stadium built for football. Yeah. It's not like it's a civic stadium. It's the Daejeon World Cup Stadium. It's Jeonju World Cup Stadium. It's Incheon Football Stadium. The 3 stadiums. There's no running tracks. What else are they cultivating there?
Well, I think I think it's it's got to that point now where it can't not be addressed. I think clubs are going to have to do something about this over the winter so that next season they're going to be better.
I mean, the thing is for Incheon, I mean, first of all, can I say it's nice that Incheon hasn't been mentioned this year for having a terrible pitch. Normally, we're the ones who get blamed all the time for having bad pitches, but I think ours has now been brought up to average quality because everybody else has sunk so low, literally in some places. But I think what baffles me is that the Incheon city government owns Incheon Football Club and owns Incheon Football Stadium. And it's Incheon Football Stadium, so it doesn't have any other events. So why is it just that they're too cheap to put money in? But and as well with the World Cup Stadium, can you imagine the people who own Wembley telling the FA, "Oh well, we had a concert, it ruined the grass, but we don't want to spend the money and repair it. Sorry."
Well, did you see? There was a report about how much money was spent on pitch repair at the World Cup Stadium. It was like 3% of their entire money earned. They earned millions and millions of dollars over the last year, and 3% of that was spent on pitch repair and maintenance.
And I think in the last year and a half, it's got so much worse as well because it's been so much more heavily used. In comparison to perhaps during COVID when nothing was really happening, and then before that, like the last 18 months with the Scouts concert and whatever else happening, it's just been, the pitch has been decimated. The pitch at Ulsan was shocking. Like Gwangju played in the World Cup Stadium that hasn't been used for 5, 6, 7, 10 years. Like you have all of these stadiums that are built in Korea and nobody spends any money maintaining them. I don't get it. It makes no sense, and it shows almost the disinterest by local cities in K-League itself.
Yeah, and
if they're not willing to spend the money.
And the most ironic thing about all of this is it's one of the best seasons for attendance. So if there's ever been a better reason to maintain these stadiums, this season the fans in the stands should be proof of that. But at least you said Incheon aren't getting mentioned for pitches. It might be a small advantage for them for these 6 games, 99 problems, but pitch ain't one.
That's another thing as well. Looking at the final B teams, we've played away twice at 4 of them.
Yeah.
So I would expect Incheon to. I mean, we won't be allowed to have 4 home games, but we should have 3 home games. We've played Daejeon twice away, so I honestly think the last game, because they like to do it like this, the last game of Incheon's will be Incheon at home to Daejeon.
But the thing is, last year we played Seoul at home 3 times, so I wouldn't.
Well, there'll be a team we play.
They try their best to spread it, but it can't be guaranteed because it'll also depend.
It can't be guaranteed, but
local councils and sports.
I imagine we'll have 3 home games though.
I was looking at this earlier and I couldn't find the answer. I'm sorry we're overrunning here, but how do they decide it? Is it based on where you finished in Final A and Final B? So if you finish, like, let's say, Gwangju, they should have more home games than away games, whereas Incheon and whoever's, well, Daejeon now, they should have one fewer. Or is it just
I think
random?
I always thought that they tried to match it. So if you've played a few extra away games, they do try to balance that, because like we've been to Gwangju twice, we've been to Daejeon twice, we've been to Daegu twice, we've been to Jeju twice, and we've been to Jeonbuk once. So my money would be Jeonbuk away and one of the other 4 away, and then 3 home games. Just because that's, in my experience of all of this, it's always happened that the teams we've played away twice, we end up playing at home once. And if there's like the imbalance where we've got 4 and 1, they don't give you 4 home games, but they will give you 3. I don't know if there's any science to it, or they just look at the results that have already happened.
I don't know. I've heard different things, but I'm not. There is a random element to the actual fixture themselves, but yeah, it's the choosing, and it is 3 and 2. They don't usually give the four games to one team, as you mentioned.
And
but
the last game is always bottom versus second bottom. It's like last year with Suwon and Gangwon. Previous years, it's been Incheon and Jeonnam, Incheon and Sangju, Incheon and who else? Suwon FC. All of these games were like bottom when the split came round against 11th place. So get ready, Paul. Another trip to Incheon.
If people know the answer, please feel free to let us know.
Send a postcard.
Wax, whatever you want. We're all at K-League United. And I think that kind of sees us out this podcast. So yes, that's it for this week. Next week, we'll be looking at K-League 2, where we're going to be looking at what is one of the most exciting promotion races in K-League 2 history. It seems to be a lot of exciting races, and perhaps next week will be a bit more optimistic than this one, unfortunately.
Sorry.
But no, like, no. But yeah, it should be a lot more exciting. For a lot more exciting. Sorry, Luke, that's even worse. A lot more optimistic for our listeners. I can't get out of this podcast, Paul. Help me.
To say
where
bye.
can they find us?
They can find us on all the social media channels that exist, all at K-League United. And that's it.
That's fair. And Patreon as well, patreon.com/K-League United. We put all the Mix Zone interviews over on there, and we sometimes bundle them all together and put them out on the mainstream at the end of the week. So if you want early access to the Mix Zone interviews during this end of the season run-in, please do go and subscribe over on Patreon. That's it for this week. I've been Matthew Binns, been joined by Paul and Luke. Paul Neat and Luke Evans, I'll say your names properly. And yeah, thanks so much for listening. Bye.
Bye.
And it's going to take me a while to get out of this pod. There we go.
킹!